Hey there, guys, and welcome to another Factorio Friday Facts discussion, number 275, 017, Science Changes, and I am joined again by Afflixian.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, so this one, you guys, you better be sitting in a comfy chair or something and have some snacks, because this is probably the longest Friday Facts we've ever had, and we're going to try to make it through it. It's really important stuff. It's obviously 017 Science Changes, but we'll start off with this awesome postcard that Albert has made here. And this is probably like the most close-up view we've ever seen of the engineer. That's awesome.
Yep.
This is...
This is the most detail we've seen on the engine here in quite a long time.
Yeah, and I love how he's just having cheers with the biter with science packs is perfect, and a nuke's going off in the background. This guy, the biter must be a defector or something.
Okay, so the biter is clearly drinking the alien goop that he used to have. What is the engineer drinking?
I think that's yellow science, or maybe it's just
yellow science. Because I'm saying military science that he's already drank most of.
Oh yeah, that is true. Man, that can't be good for you. But yeah, this is a really, this is like almost like a wallpaper.
Yeah, ask for it in high quality and get it like 4K resolution. You can set it as your wallpaper.
Yeah, exactly. So that's super cool. But let's move on to the science changes. There's a ton of stuff here. Okay.
Yeah, there's no way we're reading all of this. We'll just summarize the whole thing.
I mean, I haven't actually read the entire thing yet, so...
Oh, well, if you want to read it, go for it.
No, I mean, I kind of want to summarize it, but I didn't have time to read the whole thing, so...
Yeah, so this section here basically summarizes the history of science packs in Factorio. We started off with just the 4 science packs, with the 4th one obviously being from Alien.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 015, they introduced 3 new science packs, got rid of the alien goop, and added the space science.
Right. And then also in 015, Kovarex added the concept of being able to choose between like basically different tech paths to get either by production science or high tech science. And the price.
Kind of, but there isn't really much of a choice between the two.
No.
At this point, and that's something they go on to say in the next.
Right, exactly. So then the current state in 016 is, they've noticed some current issues where with the military pack basically is super iron heavy, where it has a gun turret in it, which is really just material heavy in general. And the rest of the ingredients seem too small in contrast. And then in the crafting menu, Science Pack 3 is sort of before military science. But when playing, it's almost certain the players will attain military science first. So that's kind of backwards as well.
Yep.
And then Science Pack 3 itself, and then it adds and this has always been the case with Blue Science or Science Pack 3, whatever you want to call it, is it just has like a massive jump in complexity, because other stuff may be expensive like military science, but it's fairly straightforward. And then Blue Science adds, mining drills and red circuits, which is like a whole thing you have to do because you got to do oil and then you got to do plastic and then the red circuits and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean that complexity jump is going to come with whatever science pack requires oil.
Right, pretty much. And then, of course, it's quite expensive, too, with the miner, because the miner just takes a ton of iron and gears and stuff as well.
Yeah, and that's not really all that interesting, because you use iron, gears, and circuits for inserters.
Right. And then the high-tech science pack is very expensive compared to the production science pack. Oh, I skipped production. Wow. Production, is very few ingredients, which is something, I've obviously noticed. I think a lot of people have noticed. It's like it's kind of weird because you almost go like down in complexity, because I'd almost argue for me personally that the purple science pack is at almost less complex even than the military science pack. So,
Well, yeah, it uses two ingredients, but those two ingredients are more complex to make in terms of the raw materials.
right, but even like, but not that much, because an electric furnace is like steel, which you would have obviously already had, stone brick, and red circuits, which you already would have had, and then the assembly machines are just basically a miner, except a different recipe.
Well, no, we're not using assembly machines anymore. We have, what's the other ingredient?
Pretty sure it's assemblers, right?
No, they dropped that.
Uh,
Oh, electric engine.
Engines, right? Yeah, that we don't even know what's made. But either way, it's far simpler than the blue science, and equally or almost less so than the military science. So it's almost like you're going down in complexity for one, but then when you go to high tech, it's going up in complexity again and becoming even more expensive, which of course makes sense as the last one, but it's just kind of like a weird ebb and flow, like dip here and there that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, and then here they actually touched on the fact that you don't really have a choice between production and high tech. The really interesting techs require both.
Right. Yeah. There's like pretty much nothing that just requires production that's actually like that useful to you. So then moving into high tech science, it's, like I said, it's very expensive. And the step from Science Pack 3 to high tech science pack is moderate in complexity, but huge in price. Because you need the blue circuits for it, which is a ton of electronic circuits. And then, the high-tech science needs copper cables as a high throughput ingredient, which feels out of place to many people, as you can craft copper cables from the beginning of the game, and they don't feel very high-tech. But it's cool, it's a little different, because it makes you kind of consider some different build options and stuff for it. And then the batteries are super low tier as well. And they also then require speed modules, which have less interesting impact on the game than productivity or even efficiency modules. So I've always felt personally the high tech science was almost like, I don't want to say not thought through, but like just random stuff. Like they just looked like almost like they just pulled up the recipe menu and just closed their eyes and like did eeny, meeny, miny, mo or something, because it's like this says, they say it themselves. It's like you have your processing unit and your speed module, which are pretty late game stuff, complex. And then you have a battery, which is like super easy and you would have had a long time ago. And then you have cable, which you got within like the first instantly. Cable's unlocked from the beginning of the game. And it's just like a really weird hodgepodge of items. So
yeah, I see what you mean.
It's just a very weird
mix. The only interesting, okay, maybe not the only interesting, what this iteration of the high-tech science pack did right is that it required processing units, and it required a huge number of a low-tech item.
Right. Yeah, that is
true. Batteries are green science.
They are, yeah.
And then speed modules, you could substitute almost anything there.
Right. So, in short, military pack could be nicer and cheaper. Science pack 3 is a huge difficulty spike, while production versus high-tech science balance doesn't really work. Let's have a look at what we can do about that. So we get to see some awesome little science pack bottles. And then moving down into 017 science. So step 1 would be the science pack names. And they say the design idea stays the same basically. It's trying to make the progression difficulty smoother and places with choice more clear. And they have 3 steps to achieve this. The names will make more sense once you know the rest of the changes, but I think it's important to set a dictionary first so the article is less confusing. I'm just reading, see if I can summarize this.
So they considered naming by numbers, but then what if they want that? If you just give them all numbers, that implies a linear progression. what if you want to give people a choice? Do you do 3A and 3B? Well, how do you know which one's 3A, which one's 3B?
Right. Exactly.
And then there's naming by colors, which we all call everything by its color anyway, but that shouldn't be the official name of the science.
Right. And then, so to summarize, it would be best to have unique names which represent each science pack well. They should be a representation of its purpose, of the stage in the game, and the recipe, but be short. Excuse me, short and easy to pronounce. It would be nice if each science pack name would start with a different letter, and so on. The only slight problem would be that those names weren't easy to find, but I believe now we have them at last. So, from left to right, red to space, we have automation, which is red, logistic, which is green, military stays the same, chemical for blue science, production, which stays the same, utility instead of high tech, and then of course space science, which stays the same. So basically, they're just changing the names of red, green, blue, and then yellow.
Yes, correct.
Which I like these names personally. They make sense, and it kind of goes.
Yeah,
it goes.
Yeah, they fit the target. Like when we get to the technology section, they fit the target technologies really well.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Fits really well with that. So science pack recipes. Of course, so they're going to change the recipes here. One of the most important aspects of the science pack is its recipe, since it defines the resources and how long it takes to make and stuff like that. So currently, red science, they kind of just show the recipes here. They're happy with the first science pack, especially when it gets a nicer name that sets the tone for the whole game. The second science pack is fine. The name was not so easy to find as green science is used to unlock so many various things, but logistics are a big part of them. Red belts, cars, so on and so forth, inserters. And automation and logistics is the first and mandatory part of the game, so they fit well together. And he considered, I've been considering to add a pipe to the recipe to make getting into oil easier. If you have pipes automated, it's so much simpler, as you need a crazy number of them to build a refinery and even craft the items that a refinery consists of. Using inner science pack recipes, not guaranteeing that the player will automate pipes and store them in a chest for later use, but it's it's a step closer, or you can just pick up pipes from a belt if they back up and you need them. The ore price would be a little bit higher, 14%, and it would add a little more complexity in the science pack, which might be a good thing if it makes chemical science easier. Especially since Assembly Machine 1 does not have the 2-ingredient limit anymore. This option is not completely off the table. Military science, basically, as you can see here, they're replacing the turrets with walls and leaving the other two things the same, which I think is a really, really great replacement. The turrets just made it insanely expensive.
Yeah, you need it. Sorry, my voice decided to leave me for a second. With the gun turrets, the way that I usually built my science packs or my science setups is I would build for a base rate of 2 per second before you consider the assembler speed.
Right.
And that, with level 2 assemblers, that consumed a full red belt of iron just for the turrets.
Yeah, which is huge. I mean, that's a lot of iron.
It's way crazy expensive.
Yeah, it's absurdly expensive. And the wall is nice, too, because it actually makes you use stone for something. Obviously, you need a stone brick in the production science, but having it have another use, I think, is really nice. And I did read a little bit of the forums. I know you read more than I did, Flixian, but some of the things I did say were people were complaining about the wall because they were concerned of there being a lack of stone on the map. But what the devs pointed out that we have to consider is that they are redoing the map generation, the resource generation. So they're probably going to take that into consideration when doing that.
Yeah, one of the comments from the devs that I saw was that stone and coal will be plentiful.
Right. So yeah, that's basically what that says.
I like the fact that walls are being incorporated to this because it forces you to have stone brick automated.
Right.
Whereas before, the first thing that required stone brick was production science.
Yeah, which is quite a ways down the road.
Yeah.
So then we go to Science Pack 3. And this is completely changed. It takes solid fuel now and an engine rather than a miner and what was the other thing it needed?
Well, it used to be minor engine and advanced circuit,
Right.
but now it's solid fuel engine advanced.
But I think they've changed the number of engines and advanced circuits, I believe. I don't think it
Yeah,
used to
it
be
used to be one of everything.
Yeah.
So there's a few changes here. One, they doubled the cycle time, but they also doubled the output.
Oh yeah, that's very interesting. So now it matches the output of military and production and high tech, which that was another thing I always found weird is that like the blue pack was like only gave you one, even though the thing before it and then the two things after it gave you two. I always find that very strange.
Well, you're still going to need the same size build to make all that blue science because
Well, right, they did double.
yeah, they doubled the output, but they also doubled the time it needs to craft.
Right, but still, I like that it's consistent in terms of its output amount.
Yeah, and that's another thing that they're putting here is military, and we'll actually get to it in a bit. Military and chemical science output 2 per cycle, production and utility output 3 per cycle.
Right. So,
So this is going to consume a little bit more. It's going to consume 50% more advanced circuits because it used to be one advanced circuit every 12 seconds, but now it's 3 every 24.
right. Yeah, so a bit more advanced circuits and then solid fuel.
And then it's completely changing from being very iron heavy like military was, and now it's going to be very oil heavy because you need to create solid fuel.
Right. So that does change, which that's fine. Solid fuel is still easier to make, I'd say, or well, it's far cheaper in general than a mining drill.
Yes, and now chemical science is the true oil hurdle that you have to get over.
Right. Exactly. So moving on to production science, as you said, it gives 3 and is a 21 cycle, which I find a very odd number, but
well, it used to be 2 every 14. Now it's 3 every 21, so you get the same amount of output.
Oh, right. So this is interesting. It requires a furnace as it always did. However, it now requires a productivity module as well as 30 rail, which I think is a little steep. But so this is going to be a thing, and this was something else I saw a lot of people complaining about in terms of the rail because of how much like belt throughput you would need. So this is going to be a thing, I think, where you would very much want to prioritize direct insertion for your production science build in regards to rail, because 30 rail is even more than a red belt full of rail for one machine. I mean, of course, that's, it would supply more because it takes 21 seconds and the belt moves, 26.6 items a second, but it's still a ton of rail to be moving via belt.
Yeah, and it's the same thing as with copper cable for the current high-tech science.
Right. Yeah. So you would pretty much kind of want to do the same thing. And just to like read a little bit, the productivity module makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's the production science pack that I always found it a little odd that it didn't have that. And stuff. So
yeah, that's true.
They cover that, and then the rails, one of the coolest recipes in the game, which also uses iron sticks and raw stone, which I think is nice again because iron sticks are used for like nothing except rail and lights. So being able to actually use that in like another
I think
recipe.
the pickaxe uses it.
Yeah, the pickaxe as well.
Which they're getting rid of. Oh wait.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, so now you actually have a use for iron sticks.
Yeah. And then, so rails are also produced quickly while being relatively cheap. This means they can be used in high quantities in science pack recipe to achieve the same high throughput ingredient as your 16 high-tech science pack had with copper cables, except rails do not feel out of place because it's never too late in the game to start building rails. And then, of course, they say the pack returns 3. So then moving on to the utility pack, it obviously no longer takes the cable. And this is interesting. I actually really like this change a lot.
Yeah, this is really, really good. Number one, it reduces the number of processing units it needs to use.
Right. It used
to be
3, right?
I think 3 processing units every 14 seconds. Now it's 2 every 21, which is a huge improvement.
Yeah, and then on top of that, it requires a flying robot frame and low density structures, which I think this is a perfect. I mean, this makes sense. It's the last science pack in the game that you actually make. Because you get space science from launching the rocket. So it makes sense. Low density structures are a pretty late game item. But it's a really, really nice mix of items while not being absurdly expensive.
Yeah. I mean, 3 low density structures, they take a long time to make, but you're going to be automating that anyway. So why not start?
Right, exactly. And the robot frame, I think, is kind of cool because that maybe kind of encourage you to make, robots and such, and just having another use for those.
This actually builds off of the battery. The battery is an ingredient for a flying robot frame.
Right, exactly. So they've kind of stepped up the complexity a little bit, which makes sense. Like we said earlier, it doesn't really make sense that the last science pack you make used to require some of the earliest items you can get. So, they say that here it's an upgrade to the battery and electric engine, so it feels much more appropriate for a high-tier science pack. And low-density structure, as hinted in earlier Friday Facts, is much more useful early on now, and it is one of the ingredients for multiple advanced personal equipment items. It makes perfect sense to use low-density structures in the utility science pack. Most of the top-tier personal equipment is unlocked by utility science. And I believe...
Yeah, and this is a good point to remind people that low-density structures are no longer locked behind the rocket research, which requires utility science.
Right. So I was just about to say that. So before people start freaking out that you need to get the rocket science first, you don't. You get the low densities through a separate research, which is really nice. And then the space science... The recipe does not exist as kind of its process of the rocket, but the values are representative. Note that it returns 1,000 science packs. So this is the cost of the space science. Obviously, again, it's not something you make, but this is just the cost of it based on launching a rocket. Now, of course, this does not include productivity, which you should always use in your silos if you didn't know. But you can kind of see now how expensive this is, because unless you really calculate out each thing, you never really knew how expensive it was to get the space science. And this is kind of eye-opening, actually, to realize just how expensive this is.
It's incredibly expensive.
Yeah, massively.
As it should be. Launching a rocket is no small feat.
No, not at all. So that's kind of, you can see there now kind of the actual cost of that. And they do say here that space science is only influenced by low density structures having a slightly different recipe. 20 copper plate, 2 steel plate, and 5 plastic bar. But other than that, it is the same. I think that's the same items it has always used. I think they just changed the amounts a bit.
Yeah, they just changed the ratios. It's the same item.
Yeah. So renaming the science pack gave me an opportunity to rethink if it really should not be called rocket science, as many people have half-jokingly suggested. In my mind, rocket science pack would mean you were trying to research some technology which improves rockets, which is not what is happening in the game. Space science pack tells me that I'm discovering space, which is what the rocket is doing. So the math Yikes.
Yeah.
Okay. So
this is just looking at the raw number of resources that you need to use to build a pack.
right. Yeah, so you can, okay, so this is pretty simple. This is, so copper, are these in, okay, I see.
Okay, so if you look at the highlighted column, which is per pack, no oil, you'll see that automation logistics use 3 and 7 raw resource. Military and chemical use low 20s in resources, so 24 and a half and 21. Production and high tech use 86 and a half each, and the rocket uses 168.
Each.
And the reason
Okay.
this is the column to look at, yeah, per pack. And the reason this is the column to look at is because it doesn't include oil. Oil is a separate thing.
Right.
And if you look at the difference between chemical science with no oil and with oil, you more than double the resource cost when you include the oil.
Yeah, that is a good point here. So yeah, this is pretty interesting. Let's see. So basically, I think this just summarizes what we just talked about throughout the whole article.
Yep.
So then step 3, technologies and science unlocks. Good Lord. Okay, so.
Yeah, this one we should just go through one by one. Just each bullet point one by one. So production science now unlocked.
Production science so now unlocks logistics 3, level 3 modules, automation 3, effect transmission, coal liquefaction, co-rex enrichment process and nuclear fuel processing, and worker robot capacity 2.
Yeah, so everything that production science now unlocks is focused on production.
Right. And you can see here that it is solely production pack along with the previous ones, not the utility pack or whatever as well. Now,
The only exception to that is nukes and the rocket.
right. Now, the robo worker capacity 2, I don't know what worker capacity 1 takes. I guess just red, green, blue, I think.
Most likely.
And then as you can see,
unless this is unlocking 1 and 2.
That's possible. And then also is you can kind of tell, and they mentioned this in the previous Friday Facts, is that you actually unlock the science packs via their own recipe in 017. It's not like they come along with some other random science.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so you would actually unlock that. And then the utility science pack now unlocks worker robot speed 3, logistics system, personal roboport, military 4 with uranium ammo, destroyer robot, and then high-tech damage, shooting speed, follow robot count, and rocket control unit. So again, so this kind of just actually shows that, you do get the parts for the rocket via their own research now, before the rocket research, typically.
Yeah, exactly.
And then with that, only the technologies which require both production and utility science packs are rocket silo space science pack, unlocks of satellite, atomic bomb, and upgrades like inserted capacity, robot speed, and mining productivity. During several playthroughs of very different settings and styles, I have tried how viable it is to prioritize one or the other science pack production versus utility, and I got results I was very happy with. Which is awesome.
Yeah, so that pretty much covers the science pack part of this Friday Facts, and we're still only 2/3 of the way through the page.
Yeah. So
this is a long one, but it's an interesting one.
Yeah,
I'm really happy with all these changes.
I'm really enjoying it. If my voice doesn't sound like I'm enjoying it, it's just because I'm tired and we're both kind of sick. And this is really long. So separate from any of the science rework, they realize that we have a few too many technologies for damaging shooting speed upgrades, which is very true. In general, combat rebalancing Twinsen did for 15 is very good, and all weapons have their uses, but in order to make, for example, a shotgun useful, you have to invest a lot of time and resources. Upgrades for it, this is hard to justify when you could instead research upgrades which benefit both gun turrets and submachine gun. tank had a specific issue where the tank cannon shells would seem weak compared to all the automation investment you would go to get them. Instead, you can just put the piercing rounds in, especially if you upgraded them and the damage is more than enough. So they have removed this bonus in 0.17. This was majorly influenced by the tank machine gun doing 100% bonus damage.
Yeah.
Yeah. The solution that we are merging all military upgrades technology except artillery upgrades into 5, which should make a lot of technology much less redundant. So the new technologies for military are physical projectile damage, which includes bullets, gun turret, shotgun shells, tank cannon shells, energy weapon damage, which is personal laser defense. Why would you ever research that anyway? Distractor robots and destroyer robots, stronger explosives, grenades, rockets, landmines, refined flammables, flamethrower, turret, flamethrower, and weapon shooting speed for everything, basically.
Yeah.
And then
I like this. This is a lot more streamlined.
Yeah, way more. Because like a lot, especially with the infinite research, like only 2 of the infinite researches you can get are actually factory related, and every single other one of them is military related, which seems really counterintuitive because the game's focus isn't military. So,
Right.
And I mean, this doesn't change that because I don't think we're getting any new infinite science that's factory related, but at least it condenses it down a bit.
Yeah.
And then the price of these new upgrades are about double than what 0.16 individual upgrades used to be. However, you almost always get more than 2 improvements in return, and some of the science packs are now significantly cheaper. You don't get all the upgrades from level 1 though. For example, strong explosives level 1 gives only grenade damage bonus. Only level 2. On level 2 it gives you both grenade damage and landmine damage. So on and so forth. So it kind of progresses up with the stuff that it gives you damage for.
Yeah, and it avoids having you get a damage bonus for something that you can't make yet.
Right. All the weapons just have a shooting speed. Kind of makes sense that they should be in a single technology, so we just did that. The artillery shooting speed is separate, mainly because it's an infinite research, unlike the weapon shooting speed. One of the reasons why, for example, landmines didn't have their own upgrade technology is because it would be just another research. With this kind of grouping, it's much easier to upgrade it into one of the categories without having more technologies, which would feel like bloat. So having landmines being able to be upgraded is actually massive.
Yeah, this is going to change the PvP balance, I think.
Yes, and it's going to change just even PvE balance, because landmines weren't that good in PvE, except against early biters. But now, with upgrades, they may actually be viable against the later game biters as well. And then on top of that...
And then, something else real quick. That the fact that the earlier levels of these researches don't impact the end game stuff means that, for example, tank cannon shell upgrades don't have 7 tiers, but just 2, starting at level 5.
Right. Now this is interesting because this next part, the personal laser defense is now also influenced by energy weapon damage upgrades, which is the laser one, but on the other hand, we decrease the base damage it does and also decreases power consumption, so it is fun to use even with personal solar panels early on, and if you invest the energy weapon damage, it becomes quite good later. So it depends how much they decrease the base damage, because if this is an infinite research, I feel like this is going to be really overpowered.
I think it might be.
Because it's already
by the time
really
you get
good.
to the infinite research, you should be overpowered.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, I guess it depends. Even before the infinite research part, I guess it just depends what the base damage is now and how much this increases the damage, because this thing was already really good.
If they get it to a point where by the time you're ready to start infinite research, you're at the same level that you are currently, that should be fine.
Yeah, that would be good. So combat robot damage was quite hideous because it didn't actually provide bonuses for all combat robots, just for the 2 later tiers. Defenders did still get upgrades just from a different place. The damage and shooting speed upgrades for bullets. Now it's much clearer as defenders are kept the same way, while the upgrade for distractors and destroyers are in energy weapon damage, which is clearly focused on laser and electric beams. I love this. He's shooting a laser out of his head. I love it.
Yeah, I was just going to comment. It looks like he's Cyclops or something.
Yeah. This is a really great screenshot, though. Both personal laser defense and strike robots now have the same laser beams, which is cool. So the rocket silo, good God.
We're almost done. Hang in there.
When the military technology changes, rocket shooting speed technologies no longer exist. This opens the question, what do we put the rocket silo prerequisite instead of rocket shooting speed? The answer is nothing. So, putting an arbitrary military upgrade there just makes that weapon type mandatory to upgrade even if you don't want to use it. Not only that, it was also the only reason why you would need to make military science packs if your only intention is to launch a rocket. So now, you can get it just through this, which basically means you don't even need to make military science if you don't want to. If you're playing on peaceful or something, you never even have to build it because you can unlock the rocket and make the rocket and beat the game without ever using military science.
Yes.
Which
that's a really good change. Military is its own branch at this point.
Right. Which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, currently military is required to research the rocket, but with these changes it will not be.
Correct. So the free play victory condition, I think they already went over this in a previous Reddit facts, I think. But we'll read it anyway. It's late at night and you have been playing for a while now, again. You built all the assembly lines that make the rocket parts, provided the tiniest silo all the parts it demanded. You can finally see the counter of rocket components say 100. You watch the great animation of the rocket preparing, all excited. You hit the launch button, written in capital letters because this stuff is lit. Your emotions are through the roof. Your eyes are desperately trying to remain dry. Feelings of pride and accomplishment, thinking about all the effort it took to achieve this great technological feat. You observe your great creation flying upwards. Epicness of the moment couldn't be much higher, at least until you see the following. So, yeah, I've seen a lot of complaints about this.
You launched the rocket, but there was no satellite inside.
Yeah, so basically trying to beat the game for the first time and realizing you didn't technically beat it because you forgot a part and they didn't remind you. So, as I said, it's really easy to forget the satellite, especially as the GUI slot 4 only shows after the rocket is ready to launch. Not to mention the new player might not know at all that the satellite even exists and is required. Mainly for these reasons, you win the game by launching you now win the game by launching an empty rocket. The satellite is unlocked with the Space Science Pack technology, and its only purpose is obtaining the Space Science Pack. So, and the idea of an escape pod has been abandoned, but we might try somehow to use it in the campaign. Mods like SpaceX, which redefine the victory conditions with super satellite, can use a remote call to disable the default victory condition. So, I think this is a fantastic change that basically you only need the satellite to actually get the military packs. If you're just in it to beat the game and stuff, for example, like speedrunners, then you don't even need to make a satellite.
Yeah, that satellite is another 100 low-density structures, 50 rocket fuel. May not sound expensive when you're building on huge scale, but for speedrunners, that's a huge cost.
Yeah, majorly.
That's an extra 10% low densities and extra 5% rocket fuel.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not using productivity. If you are using productivity, it's an extra like 15%.
Right. But even in addition to that, it's just more complexity you have to set up.
Yeah.
So this is great. This was super long. Like, I don't even, we were like 40 minutes or something. But this is a really, really good Friday Facts. V has done an amazing job writing this. The postcard by Albert is awesome. I honestly can't think of any change in here that I disagree with. I like every single one of these, and I think it's a huge improvement to the game.
Yeah, like I think in the past we've had discussions about the complexity of chemical science, blue science,
Mm-hmm.
and I think one of the points we brought up was that it incorporates the complexity of oil while also needing a huge amount of iron with the miners. But now it's just the complexity of oil.
Right, exactly. Which,
So it's a really good. This is I'm going to use a technical term here: separation of concerns. Um, so the automation science is about automating things. Logistics science is about moving things around. Military science is exclusively for military. Chemical science is about getting your oil automated. Production science is about getting your production materials automated. Utility science is about getting the high-tech stuff in place. And space science is just about launching rockets. This is good.
yeah, this is perfect. It's awesome. I love all the graphics. It was a ton of information, but it was really, really good stuff. I really like the military changes as well. And I mean, that's pretty much it. I think we're going to close out here because it's been super long, but I hope you guys enjoyed. We'd love to hear your thoughts below. And if you have feedback for the devs, go to the forum and leave it. I think they're definitely like really paying attention to this one. I mean, the little bit I read, I saw multiple responses from the devs. So I think they're really paying close attention to the feedback on this. And yeah, I'm super happy with it. And I think that's all I got.
Yeah, I am too. This is a good way to close out the year.
Yeah, exactly. So next Friday Facts will be in a new year, guys. And then hopefully that month we will get 017. So I think that's going to do it. Do you have any last thoughts?
Give me 17, please.
Give it now. All right, that's going to do it, guys. Thank you so much for watching through this. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, we will see you later.